everything had been stripped away in my life. My family was falling apart. My life was falling apart. I couldn't take care of my own children. I obviously couldn't take care of myself. And here I was, this thriving woman in society, thriving mother, thriving model, thriving self-proclaimed athlete. And all of a sudden I was like handcuffed. And I couldn't even take care of myself for a moment.
Life Reimagined with Stacey Ray.
Before we get into Christine's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us so you never miss an episode of Life Reimagined. It is so nice to meet you, Christine.
Thank you.
And you look so springy and floral.
I try.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast with me. I am honored. You have quite a story, and I know that you spend the better part of your life at this point really trying to help other women and make them realize that the journey can be the journey. So you actually started as a child model. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, started about the age of 11.
And was there a reason that made you think, oh, I'd like to be a model?
I think people said it to me a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so pretty. You should model. You're so pretty. You should do this. You're so pretty. You're so pretty. I say this a lot, but my report card wasn't getting any attention. And looking back, I think that was such a message that I didn't understand. But for sure, my external beauty was applauded. And so it's not that I stopped doing my schoolwork because I always brought good report cards home.
Right.
But that wasn't applauded. And so I kept doing the things that were applauded.
It's so interesting to me because I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about my granddaughters. And when they were young, I would find myself never thinking twice about it. I'd be like, oh, you're so pretty.
Yeah.
You're such a beautiful girl. And I don't recall really until they got older, like they're teenagers now, but I don't think I focused on, wow, you are so smart.
Right.
They would put things together, or we'd go to the Smithsonian, and it was always just, you're so pretty.
Right.
And we do that to little girls,
Yes.
without even thinking. And I'd love to think that in today's world, maybe parents and grandparents are handling it a little different. Did you enjoy being a model?
I loved it. I still am a model. I still work for a modeling agency, and I work with amazing brands that are promoting what I'm trying to do in the world. Obviously, my modeling looks very different than when I did it back then.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it with a flat chest, and I'm doing it for the mission of trying to show women that my beauty was never negated because of a disease or an illness or loss of a chest. But I really do feel at home on a modeling set because I've done it for 40 plus years, and it just feels comfortable.
Right.
So I always took it very seriously too. I wasn't one of those models that showed up late, and I was asked back from most clients because I showed up on time. I did my job. I did it well. I took it very seriously. It was a job to me. It wasn't playtime. It wasn't a time just to get out of classes. It was a job. And so I think that's why I had such a longevity in that industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why I have good memory. So
yeah, I think I heard you on another podcast, and you were talking about telling your parents, I want to earn my own money, and you were 11. Like, it wasn't like a hobby. You wanted to take care of numero uno. But you're one of 4 girls?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And what was the relationship like with your sisters, that you were the model and they were not? Was that a source of tension and friction, or?
Well, I think that my parents really didn't want me to be in the industry for that reason.
Yeah.
I can't speak for them, but I feel like my sisters have always been very supportive of me.
Right.
And we had, the sibling rivalry, but I don't think it was escalated because of my job.
Right.
My youngest sister, who I'm closest to, she's 7 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And so, we weren't in any competition.
Which is amazing. My
Yeah.
sister was 15 months. We were 15 months apart.
Yeah.
And it was just constant something or other. So
Yeah.
even into adulthood,
Wow.
she passed away 10 years ago. But,
Mm.
when I think back, I think, I don't know. It was an odd relationship. Like we were very close in one sense, but a lot of friction in the other sense. So as you took your journey in modeling, did you travel? Did you go all over the world?
I traveled a fair amount. Yes.
Yeah,
I actually was based in Barcelona for a while,
right.
Barcelona, Spain. I worked for Elite Worldwide. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was picked up by Elite in Barcelona to move over there. And I was 21 at the time. And I was a room with four other roommates. And I was the oldest one there. And I felt like a babysitter.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And these young girls that were moved into the elite modeling space in Barcelona were 15 and 16. And I think, thank the Lord I was there.
Yeah. To keep them on some kind of narrow path. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny and a bit ironic now. I still do model and I do runway work. So when I'm working in New York for New York Fashion Week, I'll be with younger models, considerably younger models. And I feel like almost the same thing is happening. Here I am, this mentor trying to teach these girls, don't forget, your beauty comes from inside. It's the light
Yes.
within you. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there behind the runway talking to these girls and mentoring them. And so I feel like I'm kind of in the same space, but there's always a reason why we are
Yeah.
where we are.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still in the industry for many, many reasons, but that's one of them.
Did you always believe that your beauty comes from inside?
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Everything outside of me was
Right.
valuable. The
Ah,
purse I carried, the person I was with, the house that I owned, the car I had, the blonde locks, whatever. Everything external was what mattered. And boy, did I get that wrong.
I've heard you refer to them as false idols.
Well, they are false idols,
Yeah.
and I was stripped away of all of my false idols, and I had to rebuild my life, and I
Right.
decided I wasn't going to rebuild on false idols anymore.
Right.
But really, everything external we have no control over, right? I mean, whether we have $100 or $1 million, it's outside of our control. And, the bags that we carry, all of that can be taken away. All of it can be stripped away. But what can't be stripped away is our faith. What can't be stripped away is our focus. What can't be stripped away is our character. But I didn't know that, right? I was always applauded for my external stuff, external
Right.
beauty, external accolades, external, whatever it was. And so I learned through my illnesses that, wow, this pruning doesn't feel very good. But in the end, I really like who I am.
Right.
Of course, I obviously had all that grit and determination from a young age. I want to go out in the modeling world. That from an 11-year-old, that's a lot of grit and
Yes, it
determination.
is. I'm interested to know something. When you place all the emphasis on external things and beauty, and it's inherent, I would think, to the work that you're doing,
Yes.
and there's a whole different focus on what's important. How does that affect you socially and with relationships with other people? Can you trust people that they actually want to be with you because of who you are or because of what they may see? And how does it make you feel about yourself?
Well, it certainly was a self-esteem issue for me. I obviously had a very low self-esteem. If you have a high self-esteem, you don't think that your worth is external. If you have a strong self-esteem, you believe your worth is who you are, your character. So I needed to do a lot of self-esteem work, which I totally ignored. I missed that part of my young adulthood when, you go through this maturing
Yeah,
phase as a young adult, young woman, where you realize that, yes, people can say, oh, you're so cute or you're so pretty, but you ultimately know that that's not your real value. I missed that stage. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming the industry, but I completely missed that stage of my life. So I think that my value was dependent on, obviously, I say this a lot in interviews, but I used to go outside of my house, like looking messy, but it took me an hour to look messy.
Planned messy,
Of
planned
course.
messy.
Like
Yeah.
I had the
Yeah.
full makeup on with a baseball cap and I was like,
Right.
oh, I just got out of bed. I'm tired. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like this, it's always a show. It's
Right.
always, and so that insecurity really did affect me in every way of my life. And you choose people based on how you feel about yourself. You choose relationships, you choose friendships, you choose, yeah, that's your focus. So I chose wrong.
So when you say it's my fault, I'm not blaming the industry and whatever. Do you really think there's fault at all when that's just inherent to the industry?
Well, of course. I mean, inherently you're a model because of, and that's not because of what you look like inside.
Right. Yeah, right.
He's looking at our
Yeah.
scans or our x-rays.
Yeah.
I think back then it's definitely different than it is now. Of course, it's more inclusive. I would never be able to model now if 20, 30 years ago,
Right.
there wasn't the kind of modeling that I'm doing. And so obviously there's been a lot of progress. And I think it's inclusivity is really important in the modeling industry
Right.
now. That's not what I grew up in.
Right.
But I think I'm hopefully part of the change. And I think I can keep being part of that change as long as I'm staying in that industry. But there's certainly room to grow. But again, I think it all falls back onto, you're right. It's not necessarily blame.
Right.
It's just what we know.
Right. And so when you were modeling, at what point did things kind of change for you where you started to get sick?
So I was 35 and I had a colon resection. It's kind of hard to explain because it was really confusing for me, especially at the time.
Yeah.
But my colon got twisted. I was always very thin. And then when I had children,
Right.
you have a lot of weight in the center of your body. And oftentimes your colon can get stretched out. I guess that's the best way to say it. And my colon got stretched out and it got twisted. And so it was kind of an emergency situation, not completely an emergency situation because I was able to go meet with a doctor and plan it for a few days later. But I did say to the doctor, and I was 35, I want to make sure we understand that this is going to be laparoscopic. I don't want a large incision. This is
Right.
my comp card. This is my job.
Right.
And I showed him physically my resume, which is a comp card, which has your pictures on it with your agency's name and their logo. And you hand that to clients as a model. But I was very specific in saying to him, be very careful how you cut my abdomen. Well,
Right.
that's ridiculous. I mean, I wasn't concerned as much about the surgery and the result of the surgery. I was
It was
more
about your
concerned,
appearance.
be
Yeah.
very careful how you cut my stomach.
Right.
Well, funnily, he ended up nicking a vein. He was frantic about opening me up in an emergency situation and didn't open me up,
Oh,
which
boy.
almost made me bleed to death.
Right.
And so finally he had to open me up. That was a real emergency. And so he opened me up from hip to hip, through muscles, through everything in kind of a jagged way, because it was like, get this woman open so we can stop the
Exactly.
bleeding. And I woke up with a blood bag above my head in the recovery room. And I was in grotesque pain. And I kind of moved my hand down my abdomen and I was like, and I said to the nurse who was attending me in the recovery room, I said, what happened? I don't know what's going on. And she was like, your doctor, she was really brisk and kind of dismissive.
Yeah.
And she said, your doctor will come in and talk to you. And I was in shock. And I was in grotesque pain and it was,
Right.
I mean, it was obviously very troubling.
Yeah.
But part of my trouble was what happened to my body.
Right.
And so that emphasis, that constant focus on external was doing me no service. It was not helping me at all. It was just furthering this false idol and this real damage to my self-esteem because I was like, oh my gosh, well, if my beauty's taken away, then I'm worth nothing.
And so in your mind, you weren't even wondering, like, am I okay? Did everything go well? It was, what the heck have you done to me?
Well, I don't think it was that extreme. I hope not. But it was, I mean, I was certainly questioning what happened,
Right.
especially because I had a blood bag above my head. am I going to be okay?
Right.
But I also was questioning, well, what is this going to look like?
Yeah.
Can I do lingerie anymore? Can I do bathing suit ads anymore? Because I did all through my pregnancies with my children. It worked the whole time. But it was concerning to me. Unfortunately, it wasn't concerning enough for me to shift yet. There was still,
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
couple more illnesses that I had
Yeah.
to go through in order for me to really shift
Right.
to understand that
Yeah.
none of my external matters. It's the light within me. But going back, no, I didn't understand that.
So, what was the doctor's reaction
Oh, he
to?
was really kind. Yeah.
Oh,
Because I've had other doctors who weren't so kind, but he was really a kind man and was like, I'm so sorry. And it was an
right.
accident. And it was an accident.
Right.
And things happen in surgery that are
Right.
not a doctor's fault.
Absolutely.
There was no reason to be upset with him. He was doing his job. And by the way, he did his job. The colon resection worked, but we had a hiccup. But no, my stomach, I have a serious scar, but now I look at it like, oh, just another battle wound.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so, at that time, you were married and a mom?
Yes. Yeah. I had 2 young children. I was married at
Okay.
the time.
Was your husband present for all of this while it was going? Was he equally as concerned or?
Yes. Yes. He was very concerned. Well, because the surgery kept going for longer and longer and longer. And he and one of my sisters were in the waiting room and they kept looking at my number, which was on the
Oh,
wall.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they have a
tell you,
number.
like, where you're at. Yeah.
And he kept looking at it and it was like in surgery, and it wasn't
Yeah.
moving. And the surgery was supposed to be a couple hours. It turned into 6 hours and he was very frightened.
Yeah.
And my sister as well. My ex-husband says to me, the doctor came out and he kind of threw himself against the wall and he was like, and
Yeah.
my ex-husband was like, what?
What?
What
Yeah.
happened?
Right.
And the doctor was very kind. He's a very kind man.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, were you able to return to modeling at that point?
I didn't for a while because after that happened, I ended up developing a bunch of food allergies because when they take certain portions of your colon out, which
Right.
they took about 28 inches of my colon out, you can now you're unable to digest certain foods. I didn't know that. So I spent about a year after the surgery trying to figure out why I was ill and why I was throwing up after I ate certain foods. And ultimately, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and they diagnosed me with a fructose allergy, which is I'm allergic
Oh,
to
that's a
sugar.
big one.
That's a big one. And so because the third of the colon that they took out, that has the digestive enzymes to digest sugar. And so I could no longer digest it. And so that was a big shift in my life as well. All of a sudden, I had a third less colon, a big scar, and now I can't eat sugar.
I don't know. If you told me I can't eat sugar, I don't know where I would be in life. But so now you're dealing with a nutritional element too,
Yes.
and you're having to almost relearn how to eat to survive, right?
Essentially, yes. You
Yeah.
can't believe almost everything has sugar in it. So
Yeah.
it's a tricky allergy. People say to me all the time, they're like, "Oh, I wish I was allergic to sugar." I said, "No, you don't."
No, you don't. No. Did you have to see a nutritionist
Oh,
and figure?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And a specific nutritionist, because most nutritionists, especially at that time, this is now almost 20 years ago. Well,
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Oh.
It's called fructose intolerance. It's technically not an allergy, it's an intolerance. I cannot digest it. They didn't have a lot of people that knew that allergy. And so
Right.
the people at the Mayo Clinic, my physicians, they helped me find somebody locally, but
Yeah.
it was a process for sure.
Yeah. I imagine. So how do you navigate that? I'm just like trying to think in my mind, like, because everything is full of sugar and fructose. What do you eat?
I eat, ironically, a lot of carbs. I eat a lot of,
Oh,
fruits. I can eat certain fruits and a few vegetables, but if you think about it, anything that can be caramelized has sugar in it.
right.
So if you think of
Right.
vegetables, you think of all the ones that can be caramelized, like onions and tomatoes and
Right.
asparagus. So those are all out. And I eat a lot of very simple food. I eat a lot of protein, chicken, but no glazes and no soy sauce and no. I eat pasta, but not with a lot of sauces on it.
Do you cook?
Not really.
Yeah, me
Not
neither.
really.
So now you do go back to work after about a year,
Yes.
and things are going well.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fine. I fortunately I scar really well.
Oh,
And
you're not a
so
keloid scar
I'm not a
person.
keloid scar,
Okay.
thankfully. And
Yeah.
I went back to work and things were fine. And I kind of went back to life. I kind of went back to kind of my normal life, which again, I'm not saying is very flattering, but I kind of went back to consuming. I kind of went back to, yeah, that same focus until my next illness.
Do tell.
Well, after that, I had a torn ligament in my right wrist. This is a really sad story. And I went to a doctor in Dallas who's very known as the best surgeon for this
Right.
particular part of your body. And so I thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze. And I said to him, oh, okay, well, if you're going to repair the wrist ligament, the torn ligament, when can I get back to my exercise? When can I get back to yoga? Right. Because I got to
Right.
keep this figure. There's all this focus. Right. And he was like, oh, no problem. This was in October. You can be doing yoga by December or Christmas. I was like, great. Okay, let's do this.
Right.
Well, by December, my arm looked like my thigh bone. It was so inflamed. I was in cast after cast after cast. And the doctor said I had this disorder that my brain was telling my limb, which was my right arm, that there was pain and swelling, but there really wasn't.
Wait, what?
It's a thing called RSD.
Right.
That's a technical term, but it's almost like he was telling me that's a misfire from your brain to your arm.
Okay.
And so he sent me to a pain management doctor, and I took a lot of pain medication because the pain was extreme. Ultimately, after months and months and months of physical therapy, trying to get my wrist to move because it wouldn't, I finally saw a second opinion, and the doctor said, you've had an infection in your arm for months,
Oh gosh.
a bone infection, osteomyelitis, and now every bone in your wrist is broken and there is no cartilage left. So we have to take out the fragments of the bones in your right wrist and we have to replace them with cadaver bones, and you will never have a wrist again.
Christine, I can't even imagine the shock of that. And I'm going to guess even the anger that comes
Yeah.
along with that.
Yeah. So I've had very different extreme doctors. Like the doctor who did my colon resection who made a mistake was just an incredible human being.
Right.
And like I said, there's mistakes that are made in surgery. This doctor probably didn't even make a mistake. 20% of surgeries end in infection.
Absolutely.
You get put on an IV antibiotic or an antibiotic, oral antibiotic. It goes away.
Yes.
You're fine. This doctor knew I had an infection. We could date back the infection. It's a longer story, but ultimately we did find out that he did a blood test and it showed an infection and he buried it. And really, there was no reason for me to lose my wrist. Absolutely no reason. And I've been in chronic pain ever since 2011. So it's 13 years of chronic pain.
And you have no wrist, so
I have no right wrist. No.
so how?
Yeah, it's complicated. So it's the wrist is, my arm is formed like this.
Yes.
I have use of my fingers.
Right.
But I have no wrist. And
Wow.
so this is all cadaver bones.
Yeah.
And they rebuilt it. So this is one bone from here to here.
Right.
So, there's no movement, there's no function. I have no function. It looks like I have a wrist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it really is one
But
bone.
it's
So there's
non-functional. Yeah.
it's not functional. Yeah.
We'll dive deeper into that right after this quick break.
Life is meant for exploring, and Sisterhood Travels is your invitation to rediscover you. Specializing in group travel for women 45 and over, we offer exciting trips to stunning destinations around the globe. Imagine tasting exotic foods, marveling at breathtaking landscapes, and connecting with incredible women who share your zest for life. Step into adventure, friendship, and joy at sisterhoodtravels.com. This is your time, your journey.
Picking right up where we left off. So, I don't know if you know this, I was in healthcare for 30 years, and 30 plus years, and I actually worked as a case manager for quite a long time, where I dealt with a lot of these things. I will just say mistakes are made.
Yeah.
There's not always accountability.
Yeah.
What I saw and what I'm real curious about is how little people are able to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that go into it because, you've got the God complex issue with
Yes.
physicians.
You're
You
correct.
also have, depending on a little bit of generation, and it's especially with older people, they see doctors like as an authority figure and they
Yes.
don't want to question the doctor. I used to have this argument actually with my husband all the time. I'd say, "You don't need that." And he'd say, "But the doctor said I did." And I go, "So?" And he'd go, "Well, I think they know what they're doing."
Mm,
And I'd be like, "Well, I think they actually don't, but okay."
good for you.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful physicians. I have many friends who are physicians. So
Yes.
in no way am I saying all doctors are bad.
No.
But what I'm saying is that we're made to feel guilty if we want a second opinion. So for all of that, what was your experience like with all of that?
Well, they take it personally. It's like a personal
Mm-hmm.
attack on them, and it's
Yeah,
not. It's just doing your
right,
homework. Again, I think it goes back to self-esteem. A lot of people can't advocate for themselves because they don't feel strong enough. They don't feel that courage to,
right.
and you're right. I think I know I was taught to respect authority.
Yes.
Doctors are the ultimate authority.
Yeah,
If my self-esteem was super strong and super, if I felt really convicted about, no,
yeah,
I'm going to take care of myself. And no, this doesn't
right,
seem right.
right.
Then I'm going to see somebody else, regardless of what he says,
Yeah,
then I would have.
right.
And I didn't. Now, the first oath of physicians is do no harm. So that's all we have to say.
Right. Right.
We don't have to say anything else.
Yeah.
But I think people advocate for themselves better when they have a stronger self-esteem.
Yes.
One of my big missions in life, other than to help breast cancer patients, is to talk about this story because I want people to get second opinions. I want people to work on their self-esteem. It's a
Yes.
muscle. It's like
Yes.
everything else. You go to the gym to get in better shape physically.
Right.
We have to work on our self-esteem to be stronger, be more courageous, be more assertive, to be more self-assured. It's self-care.
And surround ourselves with people who are willing to advocate on our behalves if necessary.
Well, I think those are different because I never had a problem really with having great friends that advocated for me.
Right.
I almost leaned on that too much instead of doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd look at them and I'd go, how are they so courageous? How could they say that?
Right.
Instead of going, why can't I say that? Why am I not being courageous?
Right.
And so I think if we build our self-esteems, man, we can there's nothing that will stop us.
So my company works with primarily women who are over 45 or 50 years old. And I would say average in their 60s, maybe 70s. They are absolutely in the generation that has been taught very strongly. If the doctor tells you to do it, you do it. What do you say to them to encourage them to just wait, take a second?
Well, especially people that age, it's hard to retrain people.
Right.
My mom said to me all the time, you have to get a second opinion. There's something wrong with your arm. I'm good, Mom. I'm fine. It would have been hard for me to think
Right.
differently, right? And I had
Right.
the extreme something
Yeah.
happen, right? I have a fused arm because of that. I think storytelling is critical to change people's perception.
Yes.
I think that's one of the best ways to change people's perception because we can't unteach something.
Right.
But if you share a story about something pretty extreme, like my arm,
Right.
then you go, oh, you know what? Maybe I should see somebody else versus just saying to somebody, you really need a second opinion.
Right.
Those are different.
I think you're right. There's a big difference. Were you still married at the time when this was
Yes.
happening?
Yes. Yes.
Was your husband a proponent of a second opinion?
No.
Ah.
No.
So that helped cement.
Yeah. I mean, I was taught that, doctors have the authority. Your
Yeah.
husband has the authority.
Right.
I was a placeholder and I was fine with that,
Yeah.
by the way. I'm not fine with that anymore. Let's put it that way. I'm a very different human. You know what? I'm probably the same person. I just had to go through all the refining moments to get to where I am today. Again, I try to tell my story often because I don't want people to have to go through the extremes that I went through.
Yes, which is very generous of you, actually, because so many of us don't want to really share those moments.
Well, they're not flattering.
Right.
I mean, my story's not flattering. I share very vulnerable moments. I share a lot of pain. I share a lot of mistakes. But if I hoard my story and I don't share it, then there's no purpose in the pain.
I love that. What a great way to look at that, because I'm not sure I've ever thought about it that way.
Well, it's wasted pain. If you don't share it to help other people, it's a waste.
Yes. So, what happened to the doctor? Can I ask that? Like, were you able to?
Yeah, we did sue him. And I'm an anti-litigious person.
Yes.
I've never sued anybody in my life.
Right.
And it was a really hard thing to do
Yeah.
because unfortunately I was going through chemo at the time. But that man needed to be accountable for what he did to me. And I didn't want him to do it to somebody else. And I also wanted to show my children that you have to stand up for yourself.
Yes.
Even though
Yeah.
I had shown them that wasn't standing up for myself for a long time, I needed to change that.
Yeah.
Because I'm their model. I'm their mother.
Right.
And if I'm showing them sheepish behavior, how are they going to be strong men?
Correct. So, was it during this point that your perspective on beauty and life and what's meaningful, is this when it started to change for you?
It was shifting.
Yeah.
It was shifting. Because I woke up for a year, 1 year, with a cast on my arm. I mean, they were all different colors, but every single day I had a cast on my arm. And there was a time, actually, there were 2 times over the last 10 years, because it was also in 2016, where they had to do such extreme surgery on my arm that I had a cast from my fingertips to my shoulder. You can't even put a hair tie in your hair.
No.
You can't get dressed by yourself. So there were 2 times of my life where I couldn't take care of myself physically for 6 to 8 weeks, 2 times. Because when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had a cast from my fingertips to my shoulder.
Right.
And they had taken lymph nodes out of my left side, and I couldn't lift my arm above my elbow. So I can't use either arm. I couldn't take a sip of water. Somebody had to feed me a straw to drink anything. I was completely like a prisoner in my own body.
In your own body. And I don't know, like, as I'm listening to you, it makes me angry on your behalf.
I'll give you one further, this will really make you angry.
Okay.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, they had a wonderful doctor in New York at HSS had just reconstructed my arm with cadaver bones and a cadaver Achilles tendon. We couldn't start chemo for my aggressive breast cancer because the chemo would have destroyed the grafts in my arm.
Oh my God.
For a month. I'm now diagnosed with breast cancer and I can't start treatment because of my arm.
Yeah. Christine, I'm angry. Oh man.
How do you wrap your brain around that? That's where
I don't know.
I was completely down to nothing. Like everything had been stripped away in my life. My family was falling apart. My life was falling apart. I couldn't take care of my own children. I obviously couldn't take care of myself. And here I was, this thriving woman in society, thriving mother, thriving model, thriving self-proclaimed athlete. And all of a sudden I was like handcuffed and I couldn't even take care of myself for a moment.
One of my biggest fears, and I'll relate it back to my parents, at a point where I saw my dad shouldn't be driving or my mom shouldn't be driving. It is one of my biggest fears in the world to happen to me, that I wouldn't be able to take care of myself and that I won't be able to drive. And as you use the term prisoner, that I'll be a prisoner of my home and I'll have to rely on my daughter and the rest of the world to do these things. I can't imagine, and I envision that as an older person, a senior citizen.
I was 41.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
How do you cope with that every day?
I wasn't coping well.
No.
I was really distraught. I was paralyzed emotionally. Literally. I was,
I'm not surprised.
yeah, it was the hardest time of my life. I will tell you that I had a monstrous group of friends that showed up for me every single day for over 2 years. Every day. They had a calendar of people. I had a Monday friend, I had a Tuesday friend, I had a Wednesday friend, I had a Thursday friend, I had a Friday friend, and I had floaters on the weekend. 8 o'clock, somebody showed up until my now ex-husband got home from work every single day for almost 2 years. That's commitment. Now, these women were showing me what real friendship looks like and what real courage looks like.
Right.
And they said to me, when you're done with all of this treatment, when you're done with your chemo, when you're done with your arm surgeries, when you are healthy, which by the way, I didn't think I could be, then it's your job to go do this for other people.
Right.
And I took that very seriously. I said, I'm going to serve for the rest of my life. And that's what I rebuilt my life on, serving, helping other people.
So, just going back for a minute, you said, like this was all happening. Your family was falling apart. I'm guessing you're referring to your marriage.
Well, I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't take care of my children. I couldn't take care of my husband. And
Right.
I'm a caregiver. So there was no question it was going to fall apart.
Right.
And I had sons. So my sons weren't emoting, I'm scared, mom.
Right.
They were not able to share how they felt.
Yeah.
And so what happens with boys, they get angry.
Right.
Instead of saying, Mom, I'm scared you're going to die, they kept me at a distance.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because fear translates into anger, right?
Right. How afraid were you, though, of the thought, oh my gosh, what if I can never take care of myself again?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to live with a fused arm. I had a little bit of courage because I could figure out how to eat after going through the colon. But I was really afraid I was going to die because the amount of chemo I had would make anybody think they were going to die. And I just had now not trusted the medical community.
Right.
I all of a sudden didn't trust doctors. And so when I walked into my oncologist in a cast, like full cast, my arm was just fused. He said to me, "Oh, you're the girl with the arm." And it completely diffused my ego and pride. Like, this guy's going to be a jerk. This guy is not going to help me. I ended up being so close to him. We became such good friends because he was just like, "Oh, she's the girl with the arm," and made me feel like he knew me.
Right.
Like from before I ever met him.
Yeah.
He was sympathetic. And I didn't think that there were doctors that were sympathetic anymore.
And you, of all the times in your life, you needed a doctor who was going to show you some TLC and empathy and actually see you, hear you.
Yeah.
Those doctors are hard to find, but when you find them, you gotta hang on.
Well, and he was very tough with me. He was very like, "Okay, this chemo is really going to make you hate me.
Right.
And you may not think you're going to survive it.
Right.
But I can assure you, we will keep you alive.
Right.
And this will save your life."
Right.
But he was very, very matter of fact, but very caring, very much cared about who I was in my situation.
Right. So when you were dealing with just the wrist issue, what happened that led you to this next diagnosis?
Well, I was in a hotel in New York City. I did not live in New York City. And I was at my 6-week post-arm checkup. I mean, just wrap your brain around that. A 6-week post-arm checkup. And I'm like, how am I going to carry my kids' bags? How am I going to do laundry? How am I going to drive? How am I going to, what does this look like? How am I going to cook?
Right.
My arm surgeon had said to me, "You're never going to carry more than 2 pounds." Well, I don't know about you, but my handbag weighs more than 2 pounds.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so I thought, well, how am I going to, and it's my right arm. How am I going to type? How am I going to write?
And how old were your boys at this time?
They were 8 and 12.
Oh, in need of mom on top of everything and grabbing the bags.
Laundry and and sports activities.
Right.
So I was trying to figure that out, and I'm in the shower. Now, like I said, I was in a cast for a year, different casts.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime I showered, I would just pour liquid soap over my shoulder and let it wash on my body because
Right.
it couldn't wash my body. I would stick my arm out of the shower. And even with those plastic things that you can buy, it's
Yeah.
still very difficult to shower.
Yes.
And mine didn't have like a little cast over my wrist. I had a cast over my entire arm.
Yeah, up to your shoulder, right?
Yeah. So it was really challenging to wash your body. And so I was in this hotel in New York City and I'm thinking about my arm fusion and I'm looking for like liquid soap in a hotel. And of course, they have no liquid soap.
Right.
So I'm fumbling with trying to open this bar of soap and I'm trying to wash my breast.
Yeah.
And finally get this bar of soap open and I wash my breast and I feel a lump in my left breast.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, oh, there's no way. There's no way I have cancer. I have no family history of it. I'm 41 years old. I'm healthy other than my arm situation. I can't even think about it. So I went home. I went to see my obstetrician and gynecologist and was sent to get a biopsy. And 5 days later, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer.
Wow. I have a friend who told me 2 weeks ago she was diagnosed with triple negative,
Hmm.
extremely aggressive, and just seeing what she's going through right now, I can
Yeah.
only imagine for you on top of all these other joys in your life of,
Yeah.
your fused arm and what have you. So now the journey begins. The breast cancer journey begins. So we are going to say goodbye for the moment, and we will be back next week with the rest of Christine's story, which will blow you away. If you liked this show, please be sure to like us, follow us, subscribe to us, give us a review, because it really helps grow our podcast.